Hey, Steeler Nation, what's going on? This is Big B, Brian Hanley, and this is Steelers Almighty. Weekly, you can find us on youtube.com/Steelers Almighty and Steelers Almighty on all the social media platforms. Also, you can find Steelers Almighty anywhere you get a podcast, people. So appreciate everybody being here. Remember to like, follow, subscribe, comment. We appreciate the support that we've received so far. So we'll continue to push these things out. So thank you guys very much for that. So let's dive into this. So last week, we spoke about a couple of different things. By the way, make sure you go and check out last week's video. But we spoke about, some of the must-win games that the Steelers have to win to be able to have the kind of season that they're going to have. We also talked about Mike Tomlin's job security. Also, some of the defensive statistical numbers that have to go up in order for the Steelers to be able to get to where they're trying to get to. And also, we talked about the DB room and where it's sat and where it needs to get to, what we think is going on in the DB room right now. So today, we got a couple of different topics that we're going to go over. I think they're actually some good ones. First thing is what we learned from OTAs. It's still going on. Look, I understand in pads, not in pads, they're in shorts. So I get that part of it, but there's still some things that we can learn about OTAs. We'll go over that. Secondly, we're going to talk about what does Patrick Queen bring to the table and how he can change this defense. I think Patrick Queen is going to be a real difference maker. We'll break that down a little bit. Also, what are some of the offensive line expectations? The offensive line for the Steelers has been bad for the better part of 3 years, 3.5 years. It got better near the end of last season, but it still wasn't up to snuff on where it needs to be. We'll talk about some of those expectations. And then lastly, but not least, we will talk about a rumor that's out there, and I think it's worth mentioning and bringing up on today's show. JuJu Smith-Schuster, is he a fit? Is he coming back? Do we want him back? We will break all that stuff down and more. So we appreciate everybody being here. Let's get this thing going. So first off, what did we learn from OTAs? As I mentioned before, there's a ton of stuff that we can get out of OTAs, but we can't take it all that seriously. They're not in pads. It's difficult, especially offensive line play. A lot of things are difficult to surmise when you're talking about OTAs when they're just out there in shorts. But still, you can get enough work in to still figure a couple of things out. So the one thing that we noticed after the first week and even the first day of OTAs, look, the number 2 wide receiver position, we got to get somebody. I hate to be Debbie Downer, but it's just not looking great right now. Now, again, a lot of things can change once you put on pads, and I believe a lot of things will. But as it sits right now, the number 2 wide receiver position has to be addressed. I think Roman Wilson can be the guy, but we'll see. We will see. Look, we know that George Pickens is number 1. But at number 2, Roman Wilson, 3rd-round pick out of Michigan, we'll see what he can do. Everybody else, they're more slot-type receivers. I'm not sure they're solid number 2 receivers as of right now. I think there's a possibility that we could still go out there on the market. I'm still a big Cortland Sutton fan and paying him to be the number 2 receiver. But we'll see what the Steelers want to do. We'll see what they fathom after OTAs. Remember, we still got OTAs. We still got a mini camp coming up. So we still have some time to try to figure this thing out. Number 2, slot corner. Look, this has been the big talk of what's going on within the Steelers right now. Look, Joey Porter Jr. is the number 1 corner. You know that Dante Jackson is number 2. But who is going to play slot corner? Look, if we're being honest, Steeler fans, right now, the people that are at that position, it's a lot of average. It's a lot of average. That's not a good thing when you're in a league, the National Football League, that throws the football around as much as it does. Look, I like Anthony Everett. I do. I think he can be a guy. Beanie Bishop could possibly be a guy. There's guys that are out there that we can possibly put out there that can be in that position, but it just hasn't looked good yet. And like I said, it's a lot of average. Can we go out there and get us a corner? Yeah. I would love for us to be able to do that. But just from what we're looking at, I know Corey Trice, there's still all this buzz about him, but the injury problems, that's my only thing with him. Just the injury bug as far as what he brings to the table. Not saying that he can't play, not saying he wasn't going to be a good player last year, but he got hurt. Again, that's kind of the knock. Again, I mentioned it on previous podcasts. The reason he dropped so far in the draft is because of injury issues. The reason that he didn't play last year, he was injured again. And again, you never blame guys for being hurt because that's tacky. But at the same time, the age-old saying, the best ability is availability. So we got a lot of guys that are average out there right now. We'll see if they can get better as OTAs progress. Third thing is, look, Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, this battle for quarterback, which technically really isn't a battle. Everything that Mike Tomlin has said and that we've seen, Russell Wilson is going to be the starter. Should he be the starter? Again, that's up for debate. I am under the personal opinion that I think Justin Fields needs to win the job. I don't think we should give him the job, but I think in the long term, Justin Fields needs to get the job. Now, here's the one thing about Justin Fields is he is not settling in to be just a backup. Now, granted, I get it. A former first-round pick, a former starter. Yeah, that guy doesn't want to be a backup. But listen to what Justin Fields has to say about the competition with him and Russell Wilson right now.
Competing. I think, Russ knows that. We're competing against each other every day. Him being out there for me, that helps me get better, us pushing each other. So, I definitely don't have the mindset of, me just, sitting all year. So, I'm coming in every day, giving it all I got, and, pushing him to be his best, and he's, pushing me to be my best each and every day. So, appreciate that.
Yeah, I like it. I like that. Now, I know that footage is a week old or two, but that's okay. I like where Justin Fields' head is at. He's basically saying, I'm going to push him every step of the way. Now, again, no team wants a backup that doesn't want to be the number one guy. So all that stuff it's obvious. Having said that, I've said this from the beginning. I just believe that if Justin Fields wins the job, not given, if he wins the job, that is what's best for the Steelers in the long run. I think that because he'll be the quarterback for the next decade. Russ will not. I know there's a lot of people out there that think that Russ is better than him, and maybe he is. And maybe for the short future, maybe that's what's best for the Steelers. And if it is, I'll be on board with that. But I think we're going to learn a lot, again, from these OTAs. We'll learn a lot from minicamp. We'll learn even more at training camp on where Justin Fields sits. But I like the simple fact that he's going out there and competing and trying to go win this job. I love that fact out of him, that he's not just sitting back and being complacent about it. Now, lastly, or I shouldn't say lastly, next, talking about Dan Moore Jr. So his future is just uncertain, on what he wants to do. I think I speak for every Pittsburgh Steelers fan out there. Dan Moore Jr. cannot be the starting left tackle when the season starts, barring injury. That can't happen, okay? And also, I'm under the impression, look, Dan Moore Jr. Doesn't go anywhere. I'm willing to deal him and get rid of him if that's the case may be, but you're going to have to come off of something. 5th-round pick or better for Dan Moore Jr. because while I don't want him to be the starter, he absolutely would be the best swing tackle in the National Football League with the number of starts that he's had at left tackle. Now, I know he's saying he can't play right tackle, but listen to what Dan Moore Jr. has said in a recent interview talking about the possibility of moving around and being that right tackle if he needs to be.
It's one of those things where it's a fine line. Based off of the amount of starts that I have on the left side, I would like to view myself as a left tackle in this league. The reality is, there's competition. Teams have different views. So, it's kind of just wherever they need me, then I got to adapt. Not everyone can play both sides. The people that can are really blessed and really athletic people. But, yeah, I mean, I kind of just do whatever they tell me.
Huh. Some of that is like, yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's not. It's like, look, we love Dan Moore. The guy, he tries, he plays hard. Did he get better last year? That's debatable. I'm not sure he did. But the bottom line is this. He can't be the Steelers starting left tackle when we start the season. Again, barring injury, that just can't happen. I don't think he can be a starter at all. You know, we love him because he tries, he plays hard, you know, he gives it everything that he has. But Dan Moore Jr. just can't be a tackle for the Pittsburgh Steelers next year. Would be an awesome backup. Would be a phenomenal swing tackle with his experience, absolutely. But I don't think the Steelers just give him away either. Yeah, there's a possibility that he would just walk next year after free agency. Okay. Or whenever he could walk. But okay, then you just let him do that. I don't think the Steelers just bend over and just say, nope, this guy, you can just take him off our hands for a 7th round pick. I think that's a bad play for Dan Moore Jr. I think we keep him on the roster and have him be that swing tackle. In that interview, it sounded like at least he's open to it because I think he knows, hey, the Steelers have basically drafted over me. The last 2 years, they've taken 2 tackles in the first round. That tells me something, and I get that. So, but we'll get back to more of the tackles later. And Najee Harris losing weight. Look, there's a couple of different ways that you can look at this for Najee. I think it's Najee's coming into camp saying, you know what? This is my last year in Pittsburgh. More than likely, I just don't see how the Steelers are going to sign him to a long-term deal. I don't see why they would. So he's thinking, I've got to, number one, have the best year that I can possibly have. Number two, I need to come into camp and everything in the best possible shape that I can possibly be. And three, be better at the things that I am not so good at. And we know that Najee has not been great laterally in his career. He just hasn't been. And I think in this offense, he's going to need to be. You know, it's one of the things that he has to be. So losing, and again, depending on who you ask, 15, 25 pounds, somewhere in between, he looks good. He absolutely looks good. And getting him out on the field and being able to do some of those things. Look, in an Arthur Smith offense, we saw it with Atlanta last year. You're going to have to be able to catch the ball out of the backfield. Now, Najee's got good hands, but not catching just swing passes. You know, he's going to have to be able to go downfield, run option routes, run out routes, do those sorts of things in this offense. Najee's going to have to be able to do that. So losing this weight, and depending on how he lost it, it can help, number one, with his agility, to be able to gain some agility and even be stronger, even if he weighs less. But two, he also understands, hey, man, this is a big year for me. If I want to get big money somewhere. So if he's wanting to get paid, he's got to have a good year. He knows he's going to be sharing carries with Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren's coming on strong. But to be able to go get paid somewhere, I think this was a necessity. But again, Najee Harris is going to be on the Steelers football team this year. Him losing weight, excellent sign, people. Excellent sign. So Patrick Queen was signed in the offseason. And let's just be honest. Patrick Queen is the best linebacker that the Steelers have had since Ryan Shazier. So my question is, how does Patrick Queen change this Pittsburgh Steelers offense? I think he changes, or not offense, excuse me, this Pittsburgh Steelers defense. How does he change it? Yeah, I think he changes it a ton. So first off, his coverage skills and tackling skills are better than what the Steelers have had in years. Look, we thought we found a new Ryan Shazier in Devin Bush, and it started out that way until he got hurt, and then Devin Bush was a shell of himself and just couldn't play anymore, acted like he didn't want to be in Pittsburgh anymore. Okay, that was fine. Last year, it was a mash unit. Lord have mercy. Guys were hurt all over the place. The depth was kind of there, but all the guys got hurt. So it made it a problem. By the end of the season, we're playing safeties at one of our inside linebacker spots. I mean, it was a nightmare when teams decided they wanted to run the football. So hopefully Patrick Queen will end all that. And I don't even think it's a hopefully. I think he will, because he was a second-team All-Pro. for what he was last year. Yes, he played with Roquan Smith. I understand that. I go, but that doesn't mean the guy wasn't there making the plays. Look at what he did compared to Elandon Roberts last year. And Elandon Roberts, excuse me. He was great for what he could do. He's a thumper. But we saw him struggle in coverage so much last season. And Patrick Queen, again, had 133 tackles compared to Roberts' 101. And again, that was 133 playing next to Roquan Smith. So if anything that he can do anything close to that this season, the Steelers are better. They're just better. First of all, the whole linebacking crew, the whole linebacker room, it has depth and is going to be better. But Patrick Queen, I just believe for what he brings to the table, it just can't be something that we should overlook. We shouldn't overlook that. Now, one of the things is that I think Patrick Queen's going to come and play with a chip on his shoulder. And what I mean by that is if you look at some of these quotes here, he took less money to come to Pittsburgh. Now, less money, clearly that's irrelevant. Let's be honest with ourselves. He said he could have gotten more to go other places, but I think he wanted to come to Pittsburgh because I think he was upset that Baltimore just said, yeah, I know you're an all-pro. Again, not a Pro Bowler, which he was that as well, an all-pro, which means of the 4 linebackers, he was the second team in the league. So there was 3 other linebackers better than him. The guy was phenomenal. And yet Baltimore said, nope, we can't use you anymore. And I think he's upset by that. And he came to Pittsburgh for a simple fact of, number one, he got a lot of money. Regardless of what he's saying about, well, I could have got more money. Yeah, we get that, but you got a ton to come to Pittsburgh, which is fine. You got a ton to come to Pittsburgh. That's a good thing. But also, I think he wanted to stick it to the Baltimore Ravens because they decided that they wanted to move on from. So I think all those things are good for Pittsburgh. I think Patrick Queen is going to be a huge difference maker. So, and his production, again, from what he did and what he brings to Pittsburgh, the Steelers are just better. They're going to be better. Patrick Queen addition to what this defense can do, again, in the run game and in the pass game is going to be incredible. It's just going to be incredible. I love that aspect of it. Moving on here. So the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line has been, let's just say, not good for 3.5, 4 years, as I mentioned before. But the Steelers offensive line is also rebuilt. And for them to go where they want to go, especially in an Arthur Smith offense, yeah, I think the offensive line has got to be something that gets better and is better. And I believe that it will be better. And here's the reasons why. Number one, the tackles. Broderick Smith, should have been a starter last year from day one, but he'll be a starter from day one this year. Whether it's left tackle or right tackle, I kind of think Broderick goes to left and Troy Fatanu goes to right. We'll see how that all works out. But we've heard from Broderick Jones. He said he doesn't care. He'll play wherever. Just line me up, I'll play. And that's the kind of attitude that I want. I think he's kind of thinking, you know what? Right tackle these days is just as important as left tackle because the pass rushers, think TJ Watt. Where does he rush from on offense? On the right-hand side. Well, who's a better pass rusher than TJ Watt? Yeah, not many people, if anybody. So, yeah, right tackle these days, even though it's not necessarily the blind side, still just as important. Just as important. So I think the tackles are going to be better. Again, Dan Moore Jr. would make an outstanding swing tackle if that's what is in the cards for him, which I believe it is. Like I said, I don't think Pittsburgh should move off of him at all. Keep him here. Let him be the swing guy, and we move forward from there. But the tackles will definitely be better this season than what they were last season. Then we got at the center position. Oh, my goodness. Look, I get it, Steeler fans. Mason Cole, God bless him. He tried as hard as he possibly could, but it just wasn't good enough. Zach Frazier stepping in and be the starter from day one. Yes. And the one thing that he will do is he will be able to fight and not give so much ground in the run game and in the pass game. How many times last year did we see Mason Cole get driven 3, 4, 5 yards in the backfield on run plays, inside, outside zones, just get dominated at the point of attack? We saw that so many times last year. I don't think that's going to happen with Zach Frazier. He's a fighter. He has outstanding punch with his hands initially at the point of attack, and he's got outstanding footwork. So he's not going to be able or be one of those guys that's just going to get pushed in the backfield or anything like that. I believe Zach Frazier is a center that's going to be in Pittsburgh for a long time and may, don't quote me, he might be one of those centers that embody what a Pittsburgh center position. Look, there's no question. The Steelers have Mike Webster, Dermontti Dawson, Pouncey. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, we have great centers that have come through Pittsburgh. I believe Zach Frazier might be the very next one. Let's move on here. As far as inside on the offensive line, James Daniels and Isaac Siamala, they got to continue to be dominant. There were times last year when they were, but they have to continue that. Part of that is their pass protection up front and the run game up front in the middle. Regardless of whether it's Justin Fields, regardless of whether it's Russell Wilson, whoever the quarterback is, they need that up the middle pass protection. And these guys can do that. Again, there were times last year when both of these guys were dominant. They got to step their game up even more this year. And I believe they will be helped. And we'll get into a little bit of that here in a quick second. But I believe both of these guys are going to be very, very good at the point of attack again and be able to do some different things that maybe they weren't asked to do last year based on, let's call it, lack of imagination, which that's exactly what we're going to talk about right now. More outside zone runs, more schemes, make things more difficult for a defense to recognize by using some imagination. Lord have mercy. How many times last year, Steelers, did we line up in a 2 tight end set, motion one tight end to the other side, to the strong side, and then run a toss sweep? We all knew it was coming. Or an outside zone. We knew it was coming. Lord have mercy, do we need to mix some of this stuff up? Outside zones, 2 back, just run, as you see in the diagrams. There's so many different things that you can do. We did none of that under a Matt Canada offense. It was disgusting. Ugh. Well, we got to mix some of that up. And these guys can do it. This offensive line as a whole can do it. They're going to be more athletic. They're going to be more powerful. So the more that the offensive coordinator can help them with disguising some of the plays and coming up with not necessarily trick plays, but just tricking a defense and not be so susceptible to what we're trying to do. Just understand that, hey, man, can't have these crazy tendencies on down and distance. Let's think a little bit out here. Let's make the defense work a little bit. Let's not make it so easy for them. This offensive line can do that. Athletic, powerful. Mix it up. I think the Steelers are going to be just fine. I think they're going to be just fine. So, moving on, people. Now, I was reluctant to talk about JuJu Smith-Schuster because, again, this is nothing but a rumor. However, it's starting to get legs. So I thought, you know what? Let's just break down JuJu, what he was, what he is, what he could be, what happened, all that good stuff with JuJu Smith-Schuster, and is he a good fit? First off, let's talk about what went wrong with JuJu. He was here, and, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion, it just looked like he got too full of himself. He wasn't as committed to the craft and didn't keep the main thing. It was always a social media thing near the end. It was a social media. I'm going to make TikToks. Him and Chase Claypool, JuJu's making TikToks on the opposing's logo in the middle of the field in road games, stuff like that. Again, I blame Mike Tomlin a little bit for some of this nonsense. He could have shut all that down. But again, it's immaturity at its finest. There was no need for him to do that, but he did. And I think that got in the way, just like I mentioned before. He didn't keep the main thing the main thing. He excelled at a number 2 position, at the number 2 wide receiver position, but he thought he was a number 1. And he was never a number 1. And I'll be honest, people, there's nothing wrong with being a number 2 receiver in the National Football League. While we all think that we're great, he wasn't. He was playing with AB. And when AB was right, it made JuJu so much better. But that's kind of where it went wrong, if we remember. He had that incredible sophomore year. He got voted the MVP of the offense. AB went berserk, and that was kind of the end of that. But he did play outstanding when he had literally the best receiver in football playing next to him. But he thought he was better than what he was, and that was kind of part of the problem. So now, here's the thing. I loved where the Steelers drafted JuJu. You know, I did. I didn't think it was a problem at all. I thought where he got drafted, it was a good spot, you know. And then he goes to Kansas City. And I thought he played okay in Kansas City, actually. Outside of Kelsey, I mean, he was the leading wide receiver on their team. He played well, and it ended up getting him paid. You know, he got him a Super Bowl ring. He was part of the play that actually won the Chiefs the Super Bowl. And he got himself paid at New England. Now, in New England is where kind of the problems start. But, you know, his best year, 1,400 yards, 7 touchdowns, 111 catches. I mean, sophomore year, that was great. But in New England, he was only there for 1 year. This past season, 11 games. He started 7. What's that about? Now, number 1, he's hurt. But only starting 7 of those games, what's that about with JuJu? 29 catches. What was it? 260 yards and a touchdown. Oof. Not great. Not great. Not to mention, what do you have? 6 catches, 90 yards when he played the Steelers. So if you do the quick math, 35% of his yards came in 1 game. 35% for the season came in 1 game against us. So I'm just not sure, man. So the next thing, and why this rumor is still, to me, it's still crazy. $12 million cap hit is what New England would take. Not to mention, he has to be cut to be available. So there is no way in hell that the Pittsburgh Steelers should give up any draft capital for JuJu Smith-Schuster. Not a 7th round pick, not a 7th round conditional pick, nothing at all. So number 1, he's got to become available, which I think he's probably going to be, because if you look at New England's roster, he really doesn't have a role anymore. They've drafted, they've brought in guys. I think he's going to be like the 5th receiver there. And number 1, I don't think JuJu's going to want that. However, like I mentioned, $12 million, you know, is the dead cap hit. He's owed $8 million this season. So I'm not sure what New England's going to do. I'm thinking they'll probably just eat it and just move on. But if that's the case, then maybe the Steelers take a look. Having said that, is he the right fit? Now, he's a vet now. He's a vet. So all of his past indiscretions, we can chalk that up to being young. He's a young guy. Hopefully he has matured, and he's been humbled. Because look at where he was and look at where he is right now. He knows that. So if you're looking at it logically, he's probably thinking, I'm not too far from being out of the league if I don't humble myself and take in this type of role. So yeah, I think JuJu probably understands that. The Steelers are definitely familiar with him. You know, he was here. So we know him for several years. So we know what he's about. Again, as long as the maturity level has hit, I think the Steeler fans and the Steeler brass will be okay with that. And what does he bring to the football field? Hey, JuJu could catch the football. He made tough catches. That's one of the things that he did. Tough, contested catches. Because again, he's a bigger guy. He is. He was a bigger guy. He could catch going over the middle. He could do all of those things. And I just like the fact that he's willing. He's a willing blocker, and he's a willing guy to go over the middle to catch the pass. Having said that, don't we have one of those in Roman Wilson? Now, I get it. He's a rookie, and we don't know exactly what he can do, but I'd rather take my chances on that rookie than JuJu as of now. But here's the arguments that I have against JuJu. He's too big for the slot. Like, he can't play the slot. Now, he can play a power slot position, but if we're going to do that, don't we have Pat Freiermuth to do that? Yeah, I think we do. And then we already have plenty of slot receivers right now. We need a true outside number 2 receiver. That's what the Steelers need. JuJu can't do that anymore, man. I'm sorry. And that's the whole thing. He just can't play that. He's been injured. His best days are behind him. And if we're being honest, if we had to pay him money, I don't know. JuJu's just not the fit. I love JuJu Smith-Schuster. I think he's a good guy. I think he's a team player. I think he's a good football player. But as far as what the Pittsburgh Steelers would need, I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense to bring him in. Again, if he gets cut and you can bring him in on the cheap to see what he's got, sure, give him a flyer. But that wouldn't be the guy that I would just be counting on and saying, okay, yep, we got our number 2 receiver. No. Absolutely not. I would much rather go out and get a Cortland Sutton and even paying him before saying that JuJu was going to be the guy. So, look, to wrap all this up, man, OTAs, we can learn a lot, but it's still so difficult. As I mentioned before, we don't have pads. You know, they're out there running around in shorts. We can learn some things from it, but we just got to continue to keep it in perspective on what we can learn. But the one thing that I do know, Patrick Queen is going to be a difference maker. He's going to be. The offensive line, it's going to be better. And some way, somehow, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to find a number 2 receiver. We always do. We find it some way, somehow. We're early in the offseason. It's still just May as of right now. Late May, but it's still May. We got time to figure something out of the number 2 position. I think we will. So just keep that in mind, people. The Steelers always find a way to get that second receiver. Again, as always, man, you can always find us on YouTube, Steelers Almighty. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff, as well as all social media platforms and anywhere you get your podcast. You can find Steelers Almighty. Until next time, people, aloha.